with intense storytelling, unpredictability, and a fresh approach. I used to think there were warning signs before a disaster, that you'd feel the storm coming in your bones, that the air would shift, that something in the universe would whisper, "Watch out." But nothing came. No whisper, no sign. Just one moment of normal life and the next, a free fall into something I couldn't stop. It started with a conversation, but not the kind you expect. Not a fight, not a confession, not a slip-up that led to a clue. No, it started with permission. She sat across from me at the dinner table, twirling pasta around her fork like we were discussing the weather. "I want to do something for me," she said, not looking up. I was half listening, scrolling through my phone. "Yeah? I want to experience something different. Something. I don't know. New." The way she said it, like she had rehearsed it, made me look up. Her eyes met mine, and I saw something I couldn't place. Excitement. Fear. Something between the two. "What does that mean?" I asked. She exhaled, set her fork down. "I want to be with someone else. Just once. Just to know what it's like." I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You're joking." "I'm not." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to roll her eyes and say, "Oh my God. Relax, I was messing with you." But she just sat there, steady, unblinking, waiting for my answer. "Are you serious?" I said, my voice quieter now. She nodded. Something inside me lurched, but I didn't speak right away. I just watched her, trying to find the trick, the angle. Why was she telling me this? Then she reached across the table, touched my hand. "I love you," she said, "but I don't want to die wondering." And that was the sentence that did it. The one that planted the seed of doubt. The one that burrowed deep in my chest and started growing into something ugly. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found myself saying things I never thought I'd say. Stupid things. Weak things. Things like, "Are you sure this won't change anything between us?" And she kissed me and said, "Nothing will change, I promise." But she was lying. She had already changed. And I was about to find out just how much. The next few days felt like living inside a glitch. Nothing looked different on the surface, our routines stayed the same, our conversations played out like they always had. But underneath, everything had shifted. She was different now. Lighter. Brighter. Like she had found a secret she wasn't ready to share. It made my skin crawl. I tried to pretend I was fine with it. That I was the kind of man who could hear his wife say she wanted someone else and just shrug it off. But I couldn't. I wasn't. Every time she looked at her phone, every time she stepped out of the room, a quiet, sharp thought jabbed at the back of my mind. She's already planning it. I told myself I was being paranoid. That she wouldn't move so fast. That I'd have time to talk her out of it. But I was wrong. So wrong. 3 nights later, she blindsided me. It was after dinner. She stood at the sink, washing dishes, humming under her breath like she didn't have a bomb to drop. Then, without turning around, she said, "So, I was thinking of going out tomorrow night." My stomach tightened. I put my beer down. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She rinsed a plate, set it on the drying rack. "With someone." There was no hesitation in her voice. No nerves, no guilt. She was past it now. This wasn't a maybe anymore. It was happening. I swallowed hard. "Who?" Finally, she turned to face me, drying her hands on a towel, her expression carefully neutral. "Jason." I should have seen it coming. The name had already been floating in my head like a bad song on repeat. Still, hearing it out loud made something snap inside me. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "You're serious?" She sighed. Like I was making this harder than it needed to be. "I told you I wanted this. You said we could talk about it." "No, you talked about it. I never agreed to anything." She rolled her eyes. "You didn't say no either." I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "Because I didn't think you were actually going to do it. That's not my fault." My fists clenched at my sides. Not her fault. Like she had no control over this. Like she had been swept up by some force of nature instead of making a choice to betray me. I forced myself to breathe. "And what exactly do you expect me to do while you're out with him?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Go out with your friends. Watch a movie. It's one night. One night. One night that would break everything." I stared at her, trying to find a piece of the woman I had married. The woman I had trusted. But all I saw was a stranger wearing her face. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about her wanting something new. It wasn't about experience or curiosity. This was about control. She wanted to see how far she could push me. How much she could take before I finally snapped. And I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I let out a slow breath. "All right. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, like she hadn't expected me to cave so easily. All right? Yeah. I forced a smile. Have fun. For the first time that night, I saw hesitation flash across her face. Good. She thought she had me cornered, thought she was in control. But she had just made a huge mistake. Because now I was done playing fair. The next 24 hours were hell. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind spiraled through every possibility. Where they'd go, what they'd talk about, what would happen after. I told myself I didn't care, but my hands trembled when I tried to drink my coffee in the morning. She, on the other hand, was glowing. I watched her float around the house, humming while she picked out her outfit, her phone never leaving her hand, texting him, probably sending pictures, probably making plans. The worst part? She wasn't even hiding it. By the time evening rolled around, I was a time bomb waiting to go off. But I stayed calm, played my role. If she wanted to believe I was okay with this, I was gonna let her. Because if she thought I was fine, she wouldn't see what was coming next. When she walked out of the bedroom, dressed in a tight black dress I hadn't seen in years, my stomach turned. She smiled at me like we were just two normal people, like she wasn't walking out of our home to meet another man. I won't be too late. I forced a smile. Take your time. And just like that, she was gone. The second the door clicked shut, I got to work. First, her laptop. She never logged out of anything, never bothered with passwords when she was home. I opened it, clicked through her messages, her email. Nothing. She was smart. Smarter than I gave her credit for. But her phone, her old phone. A year ago, she had upgraded, tossing her old one in a drawer and forgetting about it. But I hadn't. I pulled it out, plugged it in, and waited. The screen lit up. No passcode. She never thought she'd need one on a dead phone. And just like that, I was inside her world. It didn't take long. 30 seconds, maybe less, before I found the messages that made my stomach drop. She had been talking to Jason for months. Not weeks. Not days. Months. Flirty texts at first. A casual, I love our conversations, wish we had met sooner. Then photos. Not just of her, but of them. Together. At the gym. At a bar. In a hotel room. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. She hadn't just planned this. She had already done it. And now she had the audacity to ask for my permission. To smile at me across the dinner table, pretending this was just some harmless curiosity, some innocent little experiment. A noise ripped from my throat, something between a laugh and a growl. I should have known. The moment she suggested this, I should have known. No woman asks for a hall pass unless she's already used it. I looked at the clock. She had been gone for less than an hour. Plenty of time to act. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I drove without thinking. My hands were steady on the wheel, my mind razor sharp. I wasn't angry, not in the way she probably expected me to be. She wanted a reaction, wanted to see me break, wanted to watch me beg or yell or crumble under the weight of it all. But I wouldn't give her that. No. I had a better plan. Jason wasn't hard to find. I already knew where they were. She had been careless enough to mention it earlier, as if daring me to stop her. A bar downtown, the one with dim lighting and overpriced cocktails, the kind of place people go when they don't want to be seen but secretly want to be noticed. I parked a block away and walked, my heartbeat annoyingly steady. I should have been shaking, should have been unraveling, but instead I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Because now I knew the truth. Now I had proof. I stepped inside the bar and there she was. Sitting across from him in a corner booth, laughing like she didn't have a husband at home who had just spent the last hour sifting through the wreckage of their marriage. She looked different. Freer. Like the weight of lying had finally been lifted off her shoulders. Like she had been holding her breath and could finally exhale. Jason, on the other hand, was exactly what I expected, smug, relaxed, entirely unaware that his world was about to shift. I took my time walking over. I wanted her to see me. I wanted to watch the exact moment realization hit. And it did. She looked up mid-laugh, her smile frozen, eyes widening as she saw me standing there. Jason, oblivious, kept talking, until he noticed her expression and finally turned. Oh, he said, blinking. Hey man. Like we were old friends. Like we were equal players in this sick little game. I smiled. Jason. Ashley's mouth opened and closed. I could see her scrambling, flipping through excuses in her head, trying to figure out what version of the truth would get her out of this. I didn't give her the chance. Mind if I sit? I asked, already sliding into the booth next to her. Jason glanced at her, then back at me. He looked uncertain now, like he wasn't sure if this was about to turn into a fight. Good. Ashley finally found her voice. What are you doing here? Her voice was tight. Not embarrassed, no. She wasn't the type to feel shame. Just annoyed. Like I was the one ruining the night. I leaned back, completely at ease. Funny thing, I said, resting my arm across the back of the booth, my fingers barely grazing her shoulder. She tensed. I was looking through some old stuff tonight. Found an old phone. Guess what I found on it? Her whole body stiffened. Jason just looked confused. What, he asked? I smiled, slow and deliberate. A conversation. Well, lots of them, actually. I turned to her. Tell me, Ash, do you remember the date of our anniversary? She swallowed hard. What? Our anniversary, I repeated like I was asking about something as simple as the weather. Do you remember what you were doing that night? Jason shifted uncomfortably. Dude, I don't know what's going on here, but I cut him off with a glance. A sharp one. I'm not talking to you. He shut up. Ashley was staring at me now, calculating. I could see the war happening in her head, deny everything or admit to just enough to make herself the victim. I didn't give her an out. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled for a second, then set it on the table in front of her. The screen was lit up with a photo. Not just any photo. A picture of her and Jason. In a hotel room. On our anniversary. Jason made a noise in his throat, sitting up straighter. Ashley just stared at the screen, her face unreadable. Then slowly she smiled. I wasn't expecting that. She reached for her drink, took a sip, and then finally looked at me. So what? Jason flinched like he had been punched. Ashley, no, really, she said, turning to me, tilting her head like she was studying me under a microscope. What's your plan here? You want to embarrass me? You think I'll cry? Beg you to forgive me? She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound of it sent a sharp, electric shock through my spine. Jason, to his credit, looked absolutely horrified. You told me you were separated, he muttered, barely audible. Ashley shrugged. You never asked for details. And just like that, he realized he was just another pawn in her game. The thing about Ashley? She was never sorry. Not when she got caught. Not when she hurt people. And that was the moment I knew I was done. I picked up my phone, slid it back into my pocket, and stood up. No, I said, my voice almost too calm. I didn't come here to embarrass you. She raised an eyebrow. Then why are you here? I smiled. Not a kind one. To let you know you're free. I gestured toward Jason, whose face had lost all color. You two enjoy your night. I turned to walk away, and for the first time Ashley panicked. She grabbed my wrist. Wait. I paused. Not because I cared, but because I wanted her to feel it. The shift. The power slipping away from her. Her fingers tightened. That's it? I met her eyes. Unblinking. Unmoved. That's it. And then, for the first time that night, she looked afraid. Because she had wanted control. She had wanted the upper hand. And now? She had nothing. I walked out of the bar without looking back. The second I stepped onto the sidewalk, the cold night air hit me like a reset button. My pulse was steady, my breathing even. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not relief. Just nothing. Maybe that should have scared me. Maybe I should have been wrecked, unraveling, devastated over the fact that the woman I had loved, the woman I had shared my life with, had been lying to my face for God knows how long. But instead, there was just a quiet, eerie clarity. Like I had finally stopped drowning. I kept walking. Past people laughing, past taxis honking, past a couple arguing on the corner. The world was still moving. My world had just ended, but everything else kept going. I reached my car, got in, and just sat there. My fingers hovered over my phone, debating whether to call someone, to vent, to drink, to do something that would make this feel real. Instead, my phone buzzed. Ashley. I stared at the screen. Just her name. No text. No missed call. Just waiting. She wanted me to answer. Wanted to explain. Wanted to twist this into something it wasn't. I let it ring. Then another buzz. This time a text. Come home. We need to talk. I exhaled slowly. We had nothing to talk about. For the first time in years, she wasn't in control. I put my phone down, started the engine, and drove, but not home. Not yet. I needed time. Not to process. Not to grieve. But to plan. Because Ashley? She had spent months, maybe even years, playing me like a fool. And now it was my turn. I didn't go home until I was ready. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for the dim glow of the living room lamp. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. Ashley was waiting on the couch, arms crossed, one leg bouncing restlessly. She had been drinking. A half-empty wine glass sat on the table next to the bottle she had barely made a dent in. She looked up the second I walked in, eyes sharp, calculating. You ignored my call, she said. I set my keys down. Yeah. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. She wasn't used to that. She was used to control. Used to me chasing, me fixing, me smoothing things over. Not anymore. She sat up straighter. We should talk. I walked past her, heading for the kitchen. Go ahead. I heard her exhale sharply. Annoyed. Good. You really just walked out like that? I grabbed a glass, filled it with water, took a slow sip before turning back to her. Did you want me to stay? She frowned. She hesitated. Just for a second. But I saw it. She hadn't expected me to leave so easily. She had expected yelling, accusations, a fight. She had wanted a fight. Because a fight meant I still cared. A fight meant I still saw her as mine. I just looked at her, waiting. Her fingers tapped against the wine glass. Look, I know you're upset. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because she was so predictable. Upset? I echoed, shaking my head. Ashley, I don't care anymore. The words landed like a slap. She flinched, and that was the moment I knew. She had wanted me to care. She had wanted me to fight for her, to demand answers, to beg her to choose me. Instead, I had given her nothing. She leaned forward, voice dropping. You don't mean that. I just stared at her, unblinking. A muscle in her jaw twitched. She picked up the wine glass, took a slow sip, watching me over the rim. You want to punish me, she said, voice lighter now. Playful. Like this was a game. Fine. I get it. You're mad and you want me to feel bad. I exhaled through my nose. She still didn't get it. Ashley. I said her name slowly, carefully. You cheated on me. You lied to me. And you actually thought I'd be okay with it. She rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes. You're so dramatic, she muttered, shaking her head. It was just, don't. My voice came out sharp. Clipped. Enough to shut her up. She stared at me, lips parting slightly, like she wasn't sure whether to be angry or impressed. I took another step closer, lowering my voice. Calm. Steady. Absolute. You made your choice, I said. And now I'm making mine. Her brows knitted together. What does that mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I walked past her, up the stairs, straight into our bedroom. And I started packing. Not a suitcase. Not a bag. Her stuff. Clothes. Shoes. Perfume bottles. Everything she had ever left on my side of the sink. I grabbed her things and threw them out of the bedroom. One by one. Shirts landing on the floor. Dresses crumpling against the hallway wall. It took less than 5 minutes before she stormed upstairs. What the hell are you doing? I didn't stop. Didn't even look at her. Just kept throwing her out of my life. Ashley, I said, grabbing her makeup bag, her stupid expensive skincare products that took up half the counter, and tossing them right on top of the pile. You wanted to experience something new, right? She went still. Congratulations, I said, stepping over the mess, walking straight past her. You're about to. Ashley didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, frozen, staring at the pile of her things on the floor like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, slowly, she laughed. A quiet, breathy thing. The kind of laugh people do when they think they still have the upper hand. When they think the person standing in front of them is bluffing. You're being ridiculous, she said, folding her arms. You're actually kicking me out? Over this? I turned to face her, taking my time. Studying her. Even now, she wasn't scared. Because in her mind, this was just another fight. A bump in the road. Something she could smooth over with the right words, the right tone. She didn't understand. This wasn't a fight. This was the end. You cheated on me, I said, voice even. For months. And you lied about it. And when you finally told me the truth, you expected me to be okay with it. She scoffed. Oh my God, it's not like I fell in love with someone else. It was just I moved. Not toward her, but past her. Straight into the closet. Pulling out the last of her things. Grabbing handfuls of clothes. Tossing them into the hallway. Her tone shifted. Stop. I didn't. A pair of heels hit the floor with a thud. Stop it. I grabbed a drawer, yanked it open, and dumped everything onto the growing pile. She snapped. Jesus Christ, you're acting like a psycho, she yelled, grabbing my arm, yanking me to face her. And there it was, that flash of panic behind her eyes, the first real crack in her confidence. You don't get to do this, she hissed. You don't get to act like you're the victim when you let this happen. I stilled. I let this happen. She lifted her chin, challenging. You knew I was unhappy. You knew I wanted more. You should have done something about it before it got to this point. I let out a slow, sharp breath. There it was. The real her. Not the sweet, flirty version she had been pretending to be. Not the playful, teasing one. The real Ashley. The one who never took responsibility for anything. You're incredible, I said, shaking my head. You seriously think this is my fault? She shrugged. Actually shrugged. If you had given me what I needed, she said, voice softer now, coaxing, manipulative, I wouldn't have had to go somewhere else to find it. I took a slow step forward, just enough to make her back up. You're right, I said. She blinked. What? You're right, I repeated, nodding. I did let this happen. For a second, I saw hope flicker in her expression. And then I crushed it, because I stayed with you way longer than I should have. Her face dropped. You think I'm throwing you out because of one mistake? I said, shaking my head. Ashley, I don't care about Jason. I don't even care that you cheated. She stared at me, thrown off, because that wasn't the response she expected. I leaned in just a little. I'm throwing you out, I said, slow and deliberate, because I finally see you for what you are. She swallowed hard. And what's that? I smiled. A woman who just lost everything. Her breath hitched, because she finally got it. This wasn't a fight she could win. There was no coming back from this. I stepped around her, heading for the bedroom door. Take your stuff and go, I said. I'll send the rest to wherever you end up. She didn't move, didn't say anything. For the first time in our entire relationship, Ashley had nothing to say. I walked downstairs, grabbed my keys and left. Because this time I was the one walking away. I drove for hours. Not because I didn't know where to go. I had plenty of places I could crash. Friends, family, even a cheap hotel if I wanted. But none of that mattered. I just needed space. Space from the house that still smelled like her perfume. Space from the bed we used to share, the kitchen where we had our late-night conversations, the life I had been so stupidly invested in. Because now it was all gone. And the strangest part? I felt lighter. For the first time in months, hell, maybe even years, I wasn't carrying the weight of her anymore. No more overanalyzing her moods. No more walking on eggshells, waiting for the next complaint, the next cold shoulder, the next manufactured problem she could use as an excuse to pull away. No more pretending. I drove until the roads blurred together, until the city lights faded behind me, until all that was left was the hum of the tires and the steady, rhythmic beat of my own breathing. And then, finally, I pulled over. A gas station. Empty. Quiet. One of those places that looks like it exists in its own little pocket of time, untouched by the chaos of the world. I stepped out of the car, stretched my arms, and just stood there, breathing, existing, free. And then my phone buzzed. I exhaled slowly. I already knew who it was. Ashley. Again. I let it ring, ignored the first text, then the second, then the third, until finally the messages stopped. Or at least I thought they had. Because 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with something that made my stomach drop. An email. From her lawyer. I stared at the screen. Not angry. Not scared. Just numb. She had wasted no time. I shouldn't have been surprised. Ashley never did anything without a plan. And now that she had lost control of me, she was trying to control the one thing she had left, the ending. I opened the email, skimmed the words. Divorce. Assets. Property. And then one sentence that stood out like a gunshot, she wants the house. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Of course she did. It didn't matter that she was the one who cheated. The one who destroyed everything. No, Ashley wasn't the type to walk away empty-handed. She wanted what was mine. But what she didn't realize, I wasn't the same man she had been stringing along all these years. I had nothing left to lose. And if she thought I was just going to hand her everything on a silver platter, she was about to find out exactly how wrong she was. I stared at the email for a long time, letting the words sink in, letting them really settle. Ashley wanted the house I had worked for, the house I had poured my time, my money, my life into. She wasn't just trying to walk away from this clean. She wanted to rewrite the story. She wanted to win. I should have expected this. I should have known that someone like her, a woman who never took responsibility for anything, wouldn't just leave with her tail between her legs. No, Ashley didn't lose. Ashley played to win. I put my phone down, gripping the steering wheel as a slow, simmering burn spread through my chest. She had already taken so much from me. My trust. My time. My patience. And now, after all of that, she still thought she could take more. That she could turn this around, make it look like she was the one who was wronged. That she could throw a few legal threats at me and I'd just roll over like a beaten dog. I exhaled slowly. All right. She wanted a war? She was about to get one. I didn't go home that night. Not because I was avoiding her, no, Ashley wasn't my problem anymore. But I needed a plan. A real one. So I drove somewhere familiar. Somewhere safe. I pulled into my brother's driveway just past midnight. The porch light was on, and before I could even step out of the car, the front door swung open. Jake stood there, squinting into the dark, a beer in his hand. "About time," he said, taking a sip. "I was wondering when you'd show up." I sighed, shutting the car door behind me. "You're not surprised?" Jake snorted. "Dude, you married Ashley. I'm surprised it took this long." I shot him a look, but he just grinned and stepped aside. "Come on in. You look like hell." I walked inside, the familiar scent of beer and pizza hitting me like a memory. Jake's house had always been my escape, the one place that never changed, no matter how bad life got. I dropped onto the couch, rubbing a hand over my face. "She wants the house." Jake whistled low. "Of course she does. What's her angle?" I pulled out my phone, opening the email. "She's claiming she's entitled to half since we're married. That she contributed to it." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Did she?" I laughed, short and bitter. "Not a damn cent." Jake leaned back, taking another sip of his beer. "So fight her." I looked at him. "I planned to. And I did. Because if Ashley thought she could take anything else from me, she was about to learn the hard way. She had already taken everything she was ever going to get." The next morning, I woke up to another email. Not from Ashley. From her lawyer. It was short. Too short. "Please be advised that our client is seeking sole residency of the property, citing emotional distress caused by recent events. We strongly encourage a peaceful negotiation. If an agreement is not reached, we will proceed with legal action." I read it 3 times. Sole residency? Emotional distress. Peaceful negotiation. I almost laughed. Ashley must have been desperate if she was already playing this card. I could picture her sitting in some sleek office, legs crossed, arms folded, spewing whatever half-truths and exaggerations she needed to make herself look like the victim. Because that's who Ashley was. She didn't just want to win. She wanted to be the hero of the story. She wanted the world to believe she had no choice, that she was just a poor, wounded woman who had to escape our marriage, not the selfish liar who had blown it up herself. She wasn't asking for the house because she needed it. She was asking because it was mine, because it was the one thing she could still take from me. I put my phone down and exhaled slowly, pressing my fingers to my temples. This wasn't about love anymore. It wasn't even about the affair. This was about control. It had always been about control. And for the first time in her life, Ashley didn't have it. So I did what I knew would hit her hardest. I refused to play her game. By noon, I was sitting across from my own lawyer. Dan was older, mid-50s, the kind of guy who had seen every possible way a marriage could implode. He skimmed the email quickly, then looked up at me with a smirk. "Let me guess. She cheated and now she wants to make you the bad guy?" I huffed a laugh. "Something like that." Dan leaned back in his chair, tapping the paper. "I assume your name is the only one on the deed?" I nodded. "I bought the house before we were married. I paid for everything. She didn't put a dime into it." Dan let out a low whistle. "Then she doesn't have a case." I should have felt relieved. But I didn't. Because I knew Ashley. She didn't need a case. She just needed a way in. And if she couldn't get the house legally, she would find another way to sink her claws into me. Dan must have seen the look on my face because he steepled his fingers and gave me a knowing nod. "She's not gonna let this go, is she?" I shook my head. "Nope." Dan exhaled through his nose. "All right. Then here's what we do." He leaned forward, eyes sharp, and laid out a strategy so ruthless, so airtight that even Ashley wouldn't see it coming. And by the time I walked out of that office, I knew one thing for certain: Ashley thought she was fighting for control. But this time, she had already lost. I didn't respond to Ashley's lawyer right away. I wanted her to sweat. She had expected me to react, to panic, to call, to try and talk my way out of it. She had counted on me still being the man she could manipulate. But she had miscalculated. Badly. Because I wasn't that man anymore. I was done playing fair. And by the time she realized that, it would already be too late. 3 days passed. 3 days of absolute silence. I knew it was killing her. Ashley had never been patient. She had never been good at waiting for things to go her way. And sure enough, on the 4th day, the texts started coming. At first, they were carefully worded. "We need to talk. I don't want this to turn ugly. This is your chance to do the right thing." Then, when I didn't respond, the mask started slipping. "Ignoring me won't make this go away. You think you can win? You can't. I'll make sure of it." By the time the 7th text came through, she wasn't even pretending anymore. "You're pathetic." I read it, then calmly set my phone down and finished my coffee. Pathetic? No. Pathetic was thinking you could cheat, lie, manipulate, and still walk away with everything. Pathetic was believing you could control the narrative even after you had been exposed. Ashley had spent our entire relationship underestimating me, and now she was about to pay for it. A week later, I sent my response. Not through a text, not through a call, through my lawyer. Dan had been thorough, brutally thorough. The legal document was airtight. A clear, undeniable refusal of her claim to the house, backed up with every financial record, every bank statement, every proof of ownership that left absolutely zero room for argument. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the counteroffer. Dan had suggested it. A power move. Something to humiliate her. A buyout. A pathetic, insultingly low amount of money offered only as a courtesy to get her out of my life faster. A number so low, so demeaning that just seeing it on paper would send her into a rage. I imagined the moment she opened the email, the way her eyes would widen, the way her breath would hitch, and then the explosion. Because this wasn't just me telling her she lost. This was me making sure she felt it. It took less than an hour for her to respond. The phone rang. Ashley's name flashed across the screen. I stared at it for a second, then picked up. The moment I answered, she was already yelling. "You're out of your mind." She snapped. "You think this is a joke?" I smiled. Nope. Her breathing was ragged, furious, desperate. "You think you can just throw me away like some disposable thing?" I let that sit for a second. Let her hear the silence on my end. Then, slowly, I said, "That's exactly what I'm doing." A sharp inhale. And then the real Ashley finally showed up. "You're a coward," she spat. "A weak, pathetic little man. You were lucky to have me." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Yeah," I said. "Then why are you the one begging me now?" Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then her voice quieter now. Smaller. "You don't mean this." That was it. That was her last move. Not threats. Not insults. Just one last attempt to pull me back in. But she was too late. I had already won. "You'll get the check in the mail," I said, my voice calm, final. And then, before she could say another word, I hung up. Ashley didn't take it well. She tried to fight, of course. She threatened, screamed, demanded, pleaded. But at the end of the day, she had nothing. No legal ground. No control. No more power over me. And when the papers were signed, when she finally realized she had lost, when she packed up the last of her things and walked out of my house for good, I stood at the window and watched her go. And for the first time in years, I felt it. Peace. No anger. No bitterness. Just the quiet, undeniable relief of being free. And as her car disappeared down the street, I exhaled, stretched my arms and smiled.